Welcome everybody. This is week 2. This is called flamenco music. Flamenco music is one of the styles of music that eventually led itself to become what we now call guitar music. In other words, this was the first style of music where the oud, which came from the Middle East, eventually, which you see up in the back corner there of my screen, eventually became the guitar. And the guitar is obviously the kind of the grandchild of the oud. And so we eventually we want to get roots into music and learn as much as we possibly can about different styles of music. I'm going to get out of this because it's looking like it's distorting my video. Just a couple of questions we covered going into week 2 is like, how much do we know about music? Just overarching principles. So we listen to music, we also try to want to know its history, what its value, what might be the value of this music, what is its history. This is the modern version of the version I just played before it. So this is also a type of flamenco, but it's a flamenco mixed with modern electronic drums, and it has a purpose. In this case, the purpose would be dance. It would have a variety of different functions, and so we first of all want to say, well, what is music, and then what are the different functions that music has? So what is music? Well, besides sounds, we have to say that the sounds have to be organized, and the organization has to fit basically some purpose. And so all music has a purpose. All music basically is designed around the concept of being related to our lives and to fitting our lives. And so sounds organized in time to fill a social or cultural purpose. Combinations of instruments create vibrations. They're organized in time by the composer. They can also be organized to sound disorganized. In other words, organization doesn't mean we like it. It just means that the composer had an intention. And then it has some kind of importance based on the culture's history or values. So it's a pretty broad definition, but just so you understand, music actually can be defined. Okay. All right, then as we go on, how do we and everyone on the planet use music? And so this is pretty critical that you have a perspective that links yourself to other people and you broaden your perspective. So you don't just listen to the type of music you like, but you listen to music from the perspective of it having a universal function. And all music does. It fits functions. Broken down like this. Most music tells stories of the human experience, of the life cycle. And of course, they're going to tell stories based on where you are in the life cycle. So if you're 18 to 26 or something like this, you're going to be talking about stories related to relationships, coming of age, questioning society, questioning the world, maybe protesting what you see in the world. These are things that are common everywhere in the world for people in that age group. Music marks the passing of life and the rituals and the rites of the life cycle. In many cultures, more graphically and pronounced than we may think of it in our culture. But it definitely is relevant to all of us. And then most of us use music therapeutically. And the nice thing about that is we can pick music based on what we want to feel or how we wish to feel. The downside of that is most of us don't listen to music really to break it down or be analytical, and musicians have to learn to do this. So I'll be really clear on this, that music that we use for therapy is not the same as listening and analyzing music. So sometimes we have to pull ourselves out of that. Then we use music, obviously, in support of entertainment, dance, video games, movies, and this is a huge component of this particular generation and the last couple of generations particularly. Now music is locked to everything. I mean, most of us would rather watch YouTube videos than just listen to music by itself, and that's not unusual. And then, of course, we use music to convey our ideas. To teach. Music is a great brain activity. So for anybody who wants to develop their brain, learning to read music and learning to read music in time with a metronome is an incredible activity of the full brain, basically emotional, physical, everything. All right, good. So those are some of the things that we do this week. We basically have a couple of relative responsibilities. So I'm just going to kind of see if I can expand this just a bit. No, it looks like I can't. So let me just go back here. So you'll see in your activity schedule is located under syllabus and schedule on the left side of Blackboard. You'll see at the beginning it says, okay, what are the modules we're covering? We're covering Unit 1. We're covering modules 1 through 4. And then we want to be able to read those modules and look at those modules independently. So you'll look at that content. I'm going to show you on Blackboard where all that is. I'm going to move me over here. Actually, I'll move myself up here. Then these are the activities you're graded on. So you have a discussion board for Module 3. You also have a Module 1 and 2 choice of activities. So let's go up here. You see Module 1 and 2. You have a personal assessment. If you're not sure about what degree you want to get or what you want to major in or what you want to do with your life, I really urge you to take this personal assessment and then a personal assessment survey. So you have to do, you do this assessment and then you reflect on it. So there's two components to that. Or you do a music assessment survey, which is in Module 2. So this one's in Module 1, this one's in Module 2. Module 3 is about self-actualization, and this one talks through and looks through the areas that we may struggle. What we want to do is normalize struggles, because if we don't normalize struggles like procrastination, depression, time management, and addictions, if we don't normalize those, we feel shame or fearful about talking about them, and we can't get the help or work over the problem. And so normalizing this is just, you see the percentages here. This is a 2-year-old study, so it was from 2018. But you'll still see it's probably even greater now, that about 84% of adults say that they struggle at times with procrastination. 56% of young adults say that they struggle with depression or anxiety, moderately or severely. Time management is a little ambiguous because I think that's really linked to procrastination. So even though 75% claim having struggle with time management, 84% procrastination, and that's also a struggle with time management. And then 26 admit to struggling with addictions, but I think the percentage is much higher. Remember, addictions can be food, they can be video games, they can be Netflix, they can be alcohol or drugs, they can be a variety of things. So just so you know, the percentage there is probably reported. It's a lot higher probably than that. And then Module 4 is working on developing a time inventory or an actual weekly schedule, and starting the process of building a regimen, which would be built into that weekly schedule. Like, how are you going to practice? And then I'll do a little introduction into musical elements so that we can start working on the theory. Okay, so those are the goals. Here's the discussion board. I just want to make sure that when you do the discussion board, that once you pick whatever it is you want to work on or whatever it is you want to present, and it's your choice entirely, definitely watch some of these videos which propose some solutions. So like, how do I deal with procrastination? How do I take action? How do I deal with time management? How do I deal with depression? Or what is depression about? How do I deal with feelings and experiences or the stigma of depression? What about addictions? How do I get help? All these things are videos that I urge you to go ahead and watch, because it'll help you reflect not only on the problem, but what is the cause of the problem and how do we begin to work on it? And then remember that you want to go ahead and respond to at least 2 of your classmates. I would urge you to respond to more than 2, because honestly, the more you normalize of problems and make it normal, the more problems become less problems and just being human. Okay, and to be honest with you, that's all any of this is you're just a human being, and human beings have problems, and the way we deal with problems is we look at them, we face them, we become honest about them. Okay. All right, here is the way the schedule would look. We want every minute of your time, from the minute you get up to the minute you go to bed, for all 7 days to be accountable. This is just a way of you taking an inventory of the way your time works and the way you're dealing with, the way you're using your time. And then you can reflect back on that and say, does that fit my goals? And then the actual regimen would look something like this. It would have a warm-up task. It would have, introducing of new materials. So in the case of music theory, it would be doing your homework first, and then applying those new materials to you, to your life, to the way you're dealing with music. And that's that application that is the actual practicing of music and practicing of the discipline. And so that's what we want to eventually get to, and then rewarding ourselves. And so there's really a logic to all this, and just so you understand that when you build a regimen, these regimens don't happen at first; they basically happen over time. If you look here, this is again a hypothetical regimen. I'm going to move this over just a bit. If I can, there we go. 15 minutes of a physical warm-up, 30 minutes of the introducing of new material. If I were to do a regimen of 60 minutes a day, 3 to 4 times a week, that would be kind of an ideal starting point. I would do my homework for that. After that warm-up, I might do something physical that warms my brain up. I might practice scales or play a drum with a metronome, do something that locks me into that discipline. And then I'd work on obviously get my theory book work and my theory class work out of the way first. And then I would try to take some of that theory work and start to build it into my regimen. So how can I build that into what my goals are, or what it is that makes me tick? If I have a garage band or I want to write songs or whatever I want to do, I want to start to go ahead and apply that. And then I reward myself afterwards. And that reward should preferably be something that I normally maybe did to escape, but now I'm doing it to reward myself. That puts that thing that very often is my addiction, it puts it into a new place. Okay, so as an example, a video game is my addiction. Social media is something that I spend too much time on. If that is the case, then now I go ahead and I reward myself with that rather than punish myself with it. And just so you understand, the purpose of a regimen is basically to move language learning, like music discipline, from unconscious incompetence to conscious incompetence to conscious competence to eventually unconscious competence. So in other words, at first I have no idea what I don't know, and then I'm aware what I don't know, and then I'm aware of how to do what I don't know, but I just don't do it really fast until I eventually get to the point where I can do something pretty much unconsciously, like scales. Initially, I don't know what the scales even are or what they mean. And then I know what they are, I just don't know how to do them. And then I get to the point where I can do the scales, I just can't do them fluently and automatically. And then if I keep working on them and I keep using my discipline and my regimen, I get to the point where I'm unconscious about these scales. I can do them anytime, anywhere. It's long-term memory. I now have them. This regimen has now worked itself over to the point. And by the way, it's regimen, not regiment. Okay, it's regimentation, but it's a regimen. Okay. All right, so hopefully that helps. We'll get into Unit 2 next time, just to introduce Unit 2. Unit 2 is breaking down the components of music. And so we'll start the process of listening to music and breaking it down. We'll start to listen to music analytically. We'll listen to music by form and sections, which means we'll listen to a piece of music and see if we can break down its sections. Then we'll pay attention to the instruments that are in each section. And start to actually write that down and record it down, which is starting to point us down into the direction of what we'd have to transcribe if we were to write that music. And then we'd break down finding the beat, identifying the measuring of that beats, like how many beats are in a measure or what we call a meter. Most of our music is going to be in 4 beats per measure, or a meter of 4 beats over something else. And then we count the number of times we have a measure in each section. So the goal for listening to music is to break down the music's components analytically. So let me just, as an example, play a type of music for you. All right, I don't know if this is going to record, but we'll play it. There's the beat. This is an introduction. Now we have a new section, vertical line. So I draw a horizontal line and vertical lines every time there's a new section. Now there's a new section. So I put another vertical line. You might also pay attention to the fact that that section is very similar to the intro. This section with the voice again. Eventually you'll hear this as a repeated section. And this is the ending. All right, so the way I would do that initially is I would have, let me go ahead and put this up on full screen. I would have a horizontal line. I would write intro. I put the instruments that I'd hear. This is a flute synth, actually. A bass and drums. I might even break down the bass and drums. In this case, this is a walking bass, and the drums have kind of a pseudo, what we call swing feel. This is the way we quantize it. This is an electronic drum patch. And then the voice comes in, and that's a melody. I would want to eventually say more about it. Then we come back and we do the introduction again, which is now called a refrain or an interlude. And then we do the voice again, and then we have an ending. Okay. So minimally, we'd be able to want to hear that in sections like this, okay? Then eventually we start listening for repeats, and so this is better. In other words, that first way I showed you was correct. This is better. I have an introduction, I have a voice section that repeats, and then I paid attention and I noticed that the end of that repeat the first time and the second time were a little bit different. I'm trying to get this square on your thing there, okay? And then I actually went back and repeated the introduction verbatim and the voice again. So we use what we call a DC. A DC means da capo, or go back to the beginning. And then at the very end, when we get through that voice repeat, I now go to the ending, which is called a coda. All right. So this would be more accurate. So in this particular case, we learned to transcribe music, and we'll get to this when we get into Unit 2. This is still Unit 1, so you don't worry about this. But eventually I want you to learn to start to hear music and analyze it and break it down by sections. Then when you get a little bit more advanced, you'll pay attention to the beats. In this case, this had 4 beats per section, 4 beats per measure, and then it had 4 measures per section, broken specifically like this: 4 measures for the introduction, 2 and 2 for the voice section. So it was a 4 measure section that repeated. The first 2 measures repeats exactly, and then the second 2 measures are different the first time and the second time. Then it went back and repeated the introduction again. It did the voice again, exactly, repeating both times a first and second ending. And then it had the outro, or the coda, or the tag, which was a 4 measure section, specifically 3 measures, and then 1, 2, 3, which is the ending. Okay. Now I would have to listen to something maybe 2 or 3 times to be able to break down. You'll notice this was a children's piece, and it was still somewhat difficult because we're learning to listen differently. I might be into really sophisticated music, but never have done this before. So this is where we're going to in Unit 2. So once you finish Unit 1, feel perfectly okay with moving on into Unit 2. When we get to Unit 2, I'll break this down again and give you another chance to go ahead and go over this. All right, so that's basically it for this week. Remember that as you get into this, you'll have plenty of chances to go ahead and look at the video. So now I'm going to go ahead and get out of this, if I can, and bring in the Blackboard. So just so you know, everything you need is in the Blackboard Learning Units. So go to the Learning Units. This week you do Unit 1. Click on that. Then you do Module 1. Oops, got to go back to Module 1. And you click on the module, and you'll see for every module there is the reading. You want to read this reading. It's a couple pages, because at the end of the unit there will be a unit exam. So even if you choose not to do the self-assessment, if you decide to do the music assessment instead, that's fine. Then it has a video overview. The video overview is particularly for musicians. I would recommend you watch the video. And then it has the personal assessment. If I know what career I'm going into, or know what degrees I'm going to do, or know what my personality type is, and I'm relatively clear on that, I wouldn't do this. I also have a bunch of other videos here. These are videos just to kind of think a little bit about work-life balance, about creating your strongest life, and particularly about a growth mindset, okay, in this particular module. If I go to Module 2, this one is a little bit more about the role that music might have in our life. So once again, I have a PDF that I click on that, and I can read it. There's also an article we put in here about why 70% of Americans don't like their jobs or their careers. I think that's really important as you're designing your life. You want to make sure you design a life that you really enjoy. And then also something about career paths and options, particularly for musicians. This is the musical assessment. So if I'm a musician, or want to be a musician, or whatever, this might be the one that I would do. Otherwise, I can go ahead and do the other one, or I could even do a reflection on some of these videos. Build your creative confidence. What good is art? The value of creative thinking. Brain on improvisation. The value of improvisation to the way the brain works. Improvisation and learning to improvise is really a core skill to brain development. And then also a little bit more about what is grit, which is essentially discipline. All right, then you'll see the same thing happens for modules 3 and 4. 3 and 4, I actually have some assignments that I have to do. Module 3, I have the discussion board that I have to do. So it talks a little bit about self-honesty and embracing hardship. There's a video on self-actualization, which talks a little bit about some of the problems that we struggle with as human beings. And then here's your discussion forum, which basically walks you through, and then you're done with unit module 3. And then I go to module 4, which is basically designing my time inventory. And so there's my track selection. You don't have to worry about that. We've already put you into tracks. Systematic regimentation. There's a basic reading, building discipline and regimentation skills, and then there's your time inventory where you actually download your schedule, fill it in, and then upload it so that I can see it. And then there's a Unit 1 uh, exam that everybody has to take, and then you're done. And there's another regimen template. So this is all we have to do this week, and you'll again have all that up on your syllabus and schedule. You click on the schedule, and you can download that and just follow that basically as a recipe. Okay, so that's basically it for the week. Hope you guys all have a really good week and enjoy your week. And I look forward to seeing you next week. And next week we'll be jumping into more of the actual breaking down of music and learning about the musical elements. Okay, see ya.